Welcome. In this video, I wanted to walk around the backyard and show you how some of the fruit trees are doing. And I also wanted to talk about adding plants in order to attract more pollinators. When I started prepping my backyard back in 2019, it took me several months to get the planting areas ready. I have a highly compacted soil, so I had to do quite a bit of work to amend the soil in order to improve the drainage and soil quality. So I really didn't start planting any trees until around 2020. The backyard orchard is relatively new, and I'm just starting the fourth season for a lot of these trees. I'm happy with the progress thus far, but one thing I somewhat neglected to do was focus more on adding plants to attract more pollinators. I've been adding more plants like these that have a long blooming cycle. I bought these a few months ago. They were in bloom when I bought them, and as you can see, they still have a good amount of blooms on them. I have several others that I'll show you as we move along. So let me start here with my Pakistan mulberry tree. I started picking fruit off of it in late February, and it's still producing fruit. It doesn't have a whole lot of branching, so it doesn't set a heavy crop, but it's a steady producer. I'm sure it would do much better if I put it in the ground, but I just don't have the room. Next is my Mexicola avocado. It's been growing in this 22-inch container for just over 7 years, and it has set fruit growing in this fairly large container, but the production is light. I was going to up-pot it, but I've decided to put it in the ground. The growth habit on this one is somewhat smaller and compact than most other varieties, and it's listed as a slow grower. I initially thought this area here would be good, but it gets plenty of sun here, but I think it'll do much better in another section of my yard that I'll show you in just a few. Next is my Suriname cherry tree. Back in mid-February, it produced a heavy set of blooms, and as you can see, it has quite a bit of fruit development. I bought it from an online nursery. They described it as a bright orange, reddish colored fruit when fully ripe, but it must have been mislabeled because they are best tasting when the fruit turns a dark, solid black color. Once they reach that color, you go around and very lightly pull on them. If they come off easily, that's when they're the sweetest and best tasting. I've also found that if you keep the bottom base of the tree clear, or even lay a small piece of tarp, you can lightly shake the tree. Any fruit ready for picking will easily fall off, and you can collect them off the ground. Makes harvesting them much easier. And next is my Hass avocado. I recently had a viewer comment wanting to know if I still had this one. If you followed my channel, you've seen seen some of my videos where this tree is much bigger than it is now. A couple of years ago, sometime during the winter, the leader branch started to die off, as did most of the side branching. I cut off all the dead branches, and the only thing that was left was just a few feet of the leader branch. Now, as you can see here, it's bounced back quite a bit, and it's even trying to set some fruit. I'm not gonna allow any of these to set. Wanted to focus more on growth. Maybe in another season or two, I'll go ahead and let it go. Here's another one of the added. There's another hanging basket over there by the gate. They still haven't flowered yet, but they were just recently planted, so hopefully they'll all bloom soon. And over here are my jujube trees. I have two of them, and they're both doing well, growing in 20-gallon grow bags. They started to flower or produce flower buds in late April. And as you can see, all the branches are covered with flower buds, so it should be a pretty good season. And over here's the other one, also doing really well, covered with flower buds as well. Should be a really good harvest between both of them. And here's another newly added plant in a hanging basket. And here in this section I have two jabuticaba trees. This one here was recently planted, and initially it went through a little transplant shock and it pushed out new growth shortly after planting, but the leaves were real light yellowish in color and even look slightly deformed. But now they're getting a little bit more color and are looking better. This other one here flowered back in late March. Only a small amount of flower buds. It only produced a small amount, and it didn't set any fruit. So after failing to set fruit, I decided to give it a light prune and opened up this section here so that get more sunlight. And now, as you can see, it's starting to bud again. There's some flower buds that are at the very early stages of development. They're a bit hard to see off camera, or on the camera rather, but it's got a few that are starting to develop. So hopefully I'll be able to, before the season's over, I'll be able to get it to set a small crop. And next are these trees here are my emperor lychee trees. They started to flower, they started to develop flower buds back in late March. Sometime around mid-May they began to flower. And both of them produced a really heavy set of flower buds, so hopefully these will wind up setting a fair amount of fruit this season. This one here is my Kohala longan, and it produced 6 fairly large panicles that are covered with flower buds. And it's not a very big tree, but a couple of seasons ago it did set a fair-sized crop of around 20 or so, which is not too bad considering the size. It looks like it might do better this season. These are my kiwi plants that I recently transplanted into these 10-gallon grow bags. To be doing well, pushing out the new growth. And here in the center of these group of trees here is my Lolita Suriname cherry tree. Still no fruit off of this one this season, but I'm sure it'll produce some fruit before the season's over. A burgundy plum tree, which I recently grafted some scions. It's my first attempt at grafting, so So far there's only a few that have taken. And back here there's a couple of Santa Rosa scions. It's a bit hard to see, but they have some leaves and are doing fairly well. This one here is doing really well. It's put on quite a bit of new growth, and some large branching has already come off of it. The other ones, I don't see any new leaves on them yet, but I did the scratch test and they're still green, so they're still alive. Wait a bit longer on those to see if they put any growth on them. Hopefully by the end of the season they'll have some new leaves coming out. Fig trees. I have 3 planted in this section, and during this last winter, when they were dormant, I went ahead and heavily pruned the one that's in the front, which is a Peter's honey. This one here, it has a vigorous growth habit, and it put on a lot of growth, so much that it was shading out the other 2 figs that are in the back. They weren't getting enough sun, so you can see by the size of the trunks here, the one in the front has a much thicker trunk, and this one here wasn't getting that much sun, which is an Excel fig, but it's doing much better now. As you can see, it's even already started to push out a small amount of figs, but it has put on quite a bit of growth. The Peter's honey is also pushing out a small crop, as you can see here. They're just at the very early stages of development. And like last season, it's put on a good amount of growth. The one back here, it's also doing much better, is the blackjack fig. Here is my dragon fruit section. I have 5 mature plants and 5 others that I recently planted. I'll list the varieties on the screen. The mature plants started to push out new growth. As you can see here, there's quite a bit of new growth coming in on most of the branches. I got about 13 or 14 dragon fruit off of these plants, and I did a little research and found that these like regular fertilizing during the growing season in order to promote good fruit production and growth. I really didn't follow that last season, so this year I've upped my fertilizing to once per month, and I'm going to keep that schedule throughout the growing season, so hopefully I'll get more growth and a better crop. My patamba that is doing very well. I recently moved this one from another section of my yard. It was planted in an area where it wasn't getting enough sun, so fruit production was minimal. And it's only been in this section for a little over 3 months, and as you can see, it's put on a lot of new growth. It's got new leaves coming in on every branch, and I believe these are going to be flower buds, so hopefully it'll start to bloom in another week or 2. Another newly added flowering plant. Hopefully I'll get a lot of pollinators off this one here and this other one here as well. And next is my recently planted persimmon. So far there are only about 4 flower buds that have developed, and it's still too early to tell if any of them are gonna set fruit. It's only been in the ground for about 3 months, so if it doesn't set any fruit, that'll be fine. And here's another persimmon tree that I have. This one hasn't produced any flower buds, and it doesn't look like it's going to do anything this season. I did get about 20 off of it last season, but looks like it's going to take a break this year. My mango trees, and once again, it looks like this coconut mango is not going to set any fruit. It produced quite a bit of panicles with flowering buds, but none of them set any fruit. It's several seasons now that it's done the same thing. This one here is my cherry mango, which was recently planted, and shortly after planting it started to push out flowering buds, and I went ahead and cut them off, but it grew back right away. Research and found that it's best to wait till the panicles are full size before you cut them off. Otherwise it'll just keep trying to regrow them like it did here. So I'm going to wait a bit longer, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut these off. Like I said, it's recently planted, so I don't want to let it set any fruit. This other one here is my Glen mango, which has managed to set a very small amount of mangoes on it. It's still pushing out new growth, so maybe it'll produce another set of panicles. My blackberry plants that I recently transplanted into these 10-gallon grow bags. They've produced berries, but I haven't been able to sample any. Birds or some other critter are getting to them before I can. These are my cherry trees. If you saw my previously posted video, you heard me talk about not getting good cross-pollination on these. The mini royal on the left started to bloom way before the royal Lee on the right. Last season they bloomed just a few weeks apart, so I got some good cross-pollination, which resulted in a really good crop. This season, this mini only produced one cherry, and this other one here, the Royal Lee, it still has flowers even now, but just a few of them, and it's managed to set a very small amount of fruit. Most of them, as soon as they get to the size of about a pea, they dry up and they fall off. I thought I was going to get more because they were green, but like I said, right when they hit the size of about a pea, like these here, they're probably eventually going to dry up and fall off. But it does have a very small amount that did manage to set and will probably reach full development. But overall, very disappointing season. Here is my ice cream bean tree. The ice cream bean tree has an aggressive growth habit, and this one's been in the ground a little over 4 years, and I've had to prune it back several times in order to keep it from taking over this section. few more flowering plants that I recently added. There's a few more over on this side as well. Over here, this section here is my Little Miss Figgy fig tree, and it's at the very early stages of fruit development. And here's my Australian finger lime, which lost quite a bit of leaves during the winter months, but it's doing better now, and it's even managed to set a small amount of fruit. A gold nugget loquat that is doing well. And next to the loquat is the cold sensitive soursop. These don't like cold temps at all. It's just now barely starting to push out new growth. As you can see, the older leaves are all damaged with one of my Suriname cherry trees. It has a little bit of fruit on it. I bought this one from a local nursery. It was labeled as the dark variety, but it was obviously mislabeled because this one produces a cherry that is red, orange color when it's fully ripe. This is my stone fruit section. Here I have 3 peach trees growing, and I recently planted this one here is a red baron. It's still a really young tree, so I'm only going to allow that single fruit there to develop. I tried to set quite a bit more like this one here, but this is a 4-on-1 peach tree that I thought I did a good job of thinning out, but obviously I left way too many on there, so it still managed to produce a pretty good amount of fair-sized peaches, but I left too many on there. There's a lot of them that are undersized, so next season I'll have to do a much better job than I did this season. The Santa Barbara peach tree in the back, I'll show you on the next one. It's just ending its flowering cycle, so there's no fruit on that one yet. And here are my nectarine trees. This is a Spice Z nectarplum that has a fair amount of fruit that is developing. So I have a Saze King and a Snow Queen nectarine in the back, but there's no fruit development on those yet. They're still in their flowering cycle, so I'll show those in another video. And over here in this section, I have a cotton candy apium, royal blenheim, and Katy apricot. And I get a good amount of fruit off the apium and the blenheim, but the Katy, this one here, doesn't seem to do well in my area. This season, I don't think it's gonna set any fruit. It has a good looking healthy leaves on it, but I think I might just use that for grafting rather than pull it out. This one here is the cotton candy apium, and as you can see, it's got a pretty good amount of fruit on it. It does really well. The blenheim that's in the back, that one doesn't have quite as much fruit set on it, but it does produce a good amount. And they're pretty hard to see because the fruit the fruit developing it's still green, so it's a bit hard to see on video. But there's a pretty fair amount of fruit developing on these trees, on the Blenheim and the Apium. Here's my recently purchased Carmen avocado that is doing well. And back here are my pink Barbie guavas. And I harvested a good amount of fruit off of them in December, and I pruned it back shortly afterwards, but it's got quite a bit of new growth on there. And this is my Eureka lemon tree, Racara orange tree, which are both doing well. They got hit pretty hard by snails and slugs, and also a lot of cold winter damage. My semi-dwarf Rio Red grapefruit tree, which produced a really heavy set of flower buds this season, and I'm not sure what happened, but the majority of them all fell off without setting any fruit. And the one thing I did notice is that the leaves are not quite as healthy as they should be. They're a bit yellow on there, so I'm gonna have to follow up on this one, see if it's a nutrient deficiency. And here's my Meyer lemon tree that this one did manage to set some fruit. It's doing better than the Rio Red grapefruit tree. My ice cream banana plants. Last season I got 3 plants that were growing here to each produce a rack of about 40 to 50 bananas. I cut them down after harvesting, but I doubt these 2 here will produce any bananas. They're still a bit young, so maybe next season. And here's my recently planted Anna apple. And this is my Dorset golden apple tree, which, as you can see, has managed to produce quite a bit of apples there, and they're just about ready to be harvested. My pear trees, it's a hood and a pineapple pear tree, which are both low chill varieties. I planted them over 4 years ago, and every season they're late coming out of dormancy. And once again, here we are in June, and no leaves, and they're still dormant. I decided that I'm just going to go ahead and pull them and give them to a friend that lives in a area that has more chill hours, and hopefully he'll have better luck getting them to fruit. Instead, what I plan on putting here in this area are some avocado trees. The Mexicola that I showed you earlier, which has a small compact growth habit, and I'm probably also going to put the Carmen avocado here. This area gets plenty of sun, so hopefully they'll do well. Here on top I also have some more flowering plants. I'm still doing some work up here in this section, and I'm going to be adding some large rectangular wall hanging planters, so by the time I'm done there should be plenty of flowers here for the growing season. Section are 2 recently planted jackfruit trees along with some more flowering plants. This one that's on the right is a gold nugget dwarf jackfruit tree, which according to nursery info can be maintained at a height of about 8 feet. And the other one here is a Chena jackfruit. This one's on regular rootstock. I have the branches tied down at an angle. From research I've done, this helps encourage better fruiting. But this one's going to be a challenge to keep it at a manageable height. my white sapote that I purchased last season, and it's doing really well. I'm going to keep it in this grow bag for at least one more season to see how it does in this area. And this is my Rolina Deliciosa that I bought last season as well. And as soon as it puts on a little bit more growth, I'm going to be tipping that leader branch, which by doing so will hopefully encourage more side branching. And I'm going to keep this one in a grow bag as well and see how it does in this section of my yard. I'll do the same for this Barbados Acerola Cherry tree, which I recently transplanted into a 10-gallon grow bag. Root bound when I pulled it out of the nursery pot. And as you can see here in the video, the roots have begun to circle. These trees are listed as fast growing, so keeping them in a round plastic pot for an extended period of time is not advisable. As soon as the roots hit the plastic liner, they continue to grow by circling the pot and become root bound. Rather than untangling the roots, I wound up cutting off all the circling roots. I had previously done some research on this and found that for some trees it's best just to cut the circling roots off if they are heavily root bound. From the research I had done, when you come across a heavily root bound tree, trimming the roots is the best in most cases. Supposedly, once the roots start circling, they tend to continue that growth habit when you put them in the ground. So the tree will struggle to set a well-established root system. So it's best just to trim off any circling roots before planting. This is my second Barbados cherry tree. Years ago I had another one of these, and when it came time to planting, I found it was also heavily root bound. At that time, I untangled the roots and planted it without cutting any of the roots. The tree survived for a couple of years, but slowly it began to decline and eventually it died. Hopefully that research holds true and the tree will be fine. I'm going to keep it in a grow bag for another season before I put it in the ground. Hopefully by then it'll have established a better root structure and I'll have better luck with this one. Here is my strawberry tree, which I recently purchased and transplanted to this 10-gallon grow bag. Happy with the branching on this one. It has some lower branches like this one here, and there's one more on the other side there that I'm going to wind up cutting. This tree's been recently transplanted, so I'm going to wait a week or two before I do that, but hopefully by doing so it's going to encourage more branching up closer to the top of the tree, and that we all be able to maintain a better structure, easier to maintain. And over here in this last remaining section, I have a few more trees growing, but I'm still working on that area, so I'll save that for, as soon as I get the work completed, I'll save that for another video. That'll be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. As always, stay safe, grow your own, and thank you for watching.